All right, everyone, cue the TDS sufferers in their endless parade blaming Donald Trump for what happened over the last 24 hours with a number of special elections and ballot initiatives and stuff that the GOP, as usual, was not prepared for. The GOP is great for turnout in mainline elections. They keep getting it wrong, though, with regards to getting that turnout to keep going in the off-year sort of shit that goes on, which actually is of import, but they lose interest in it, and trying to convince the GOP to win on issues is difficult. I would like to focus on one especially, though, and how hilarious it is to watch, like, Trump getting blamed for this by DeSantis fans. And by the way, as someone who is pro-choice, with obvious cutoff exceptions, I'm not Ralph Northam. Maybe Ohio Issue 1 doesn't bother me because I'm not a member of the GOP or something like that. I'm not an evangelical voter. But for the Republicans that are pissed, because this effectively Issue 1 was whether to codify in the Ohio Constitution effectively the right for a woman to have an abortion, to make their own bodily decisions. It would also apply to men too. It's not just abortion that has to do with this. The reproductive health. Of course, men do have sperm and shit like that, so that might actually be an interesting legal issue at some point in the future. And the voters overwhelmingly approved that proposal. They also finally legalized marijuana in the state of Ohio. Recreational marijuana is now legal there too. Again, the GOP can go full moralist or it can win. I've warned of this, but some people paid no heed. If you want to blame anyone on issues like this, and why the GOP keeps losing, it's predominantly people like Lindsey Graham. Hell, if you look at Ron DeSantis, he's more of a hardliner on the issue of abortion. The Ohioans rejected that hardline sort of approach and decided to codify this in their constitution. Trump has remained fairly principled. He sees it as more of a state's issue. Well, then this conforms to what the GOP originally pretended to want. Originally, when they said get rid of Roe v. Wade, they said it's a states' rights issue. Now you've got Lindsey Graham and others saying, no, we need a federal ban on abortion, or at least a strong limitation. Well, that's not what you pitch to voters on. Blaming Trump makes additionally no sense because Roe v. Wade was ended in the first place, allowing any state to enact any of the new restrictions that we've seen, or, by the way, loosening them. Because Roe v. Wade ended, that was because of Trump getting 3 Supreme Court justices. Well, they loved him at that moment. How fickle they've become. Somehow it's also Trump's fault that his endorsed candidates lose, even though the GOP continues to lack fundraising capabilities for people. And Mitch McConnell is known for rallying money for MAGA candidates. No, he threw a number of them under the bus in several elections running. So did Ronna McDaniels, etc., etc., etc. Kevin McCarthy, who now, of course, is out on his ass. Trump's not to blame for any of these things happening. The GOP at large is to blame. You won on the issue of abortion by saying get rid of Roe v. Wade as a state's issue, and then immediately tried to turn it into a national issue. Notice there were a few sane people who thought that was a bad idea. And Lindsey Graham comes out right before a mainline election and says, yeah, if we win enough of these seats, we'll be able to get rid of all the abortions and save all the babies and stuff. Yeah, well, the pitch didn't go over too well now, did it? Being moralistic on drugs. Again, I think it was the 2000s when Trump came out in favor of medical marijuana. That puts him in the progressive side as far as the GOP goes. Some of them don't believe in it even now. Believe it or not, there are still people in the country that don't think that a cancer patient should be able to get high so that they can eat something. I think that's ghoulish and deeply disturbing and goes against the very founding principles of the United States and boil it down to a civics issue more than anything else. The GOP is just retarded. We've got to come to the conclusion the GOP can be handed the high ground on any issue, and it will almost always stagger and punt it and just go crazy. It's constant. Abortion is a great example. The Democrats overstretched on the issue, with Northam and all the others effectively allowing abortion up to the point of birth, which very few people support, and the Republicans had the high ground. But instead of arguing for a Euro-style limited system, so a 15-week or something like that, you got the hardliners immediately sucking all the oxygen out of the room into their lungs to shout from the rooftops as loudly as possible, "We want to ban all abortions, save the babies." I don't care if you believe that that's proper morally. Most people disagree with you. So if you're thinking in terms of political strategy so that you can create any limitation at all, first you have to actually get people elected. The GOP keeps fucking itself. They're handed a win on education. Democratic Party is trying to teach kids communism in schools and teach them how to sphincter bait and weird shit like that. And take explicitly against parents' rights to do anything about it, by the way. So what does the GOP decide to do? Well, this is the reason that we need to teach more about Jesus in schools. Yeah, again, that pitch doesn't work so well. Even a large proportion of Christians don't want religious doctrine in schools. If the kid wants to pray, that's perfectly fine. The teacher shouldn't need to lead them in prayer. It becomes an interdenominational problem too if the teacher's Catholic and that kid over there is a Calvinist. They're slightly different. Ohio issue 1 passed. Overwhelmingly, but more than 10 points. People are tired of the hard lining by the GOP. It could have been the party of sense on issues like this. It could have contraposed itself. Look, we're talking about common sense, and the Dems over there are going completely apeshit. They're saying that you should be able to abort your kid 2 years after they're born and crazy shit like that. They're nuts. We represent sense. We represent a civilized approach. They could have made themselves the adults in the room, but Republicans aren't very good at doing that now, are they? Hell, some of them don't try. You'll know Trump can get away with it because he's just zany, but if you're going to try to be the solemn party of the Republic and shit like that, we're still the party of Lincoln, which, you're stupid and tyrannical, some of you. Then you can't go all in and say, well, I want to throw people in jail for smoking weed. I want them women barefooting in the kitchen and shit like that. It's just not going to work vote-wise. Put aside your morality, your moral beliefs, which most of those politicians, by the way, don't even share with you. They don't even care about the issue from a moral perspective. They want money. Their God is money. And if abortion makes them money, they'll invest in the company that's using the fetal stem cells. They have no problem with that. They're very religious people. It's perfectly fine. Ohio issue 1, and weed at this point is basically a non-issue, I suppose. Again, there are still some people that are against even medical pot, but that number's been shrinking drastically over time. I noticed that the hardest line moralists have become even more vicious about it. They talk about marijuana and its ills all the time now, and they've even got like fake studies showing like a massive rise in problems because kids are using weed, and study that says the weed is so much more potent now than it was then, and other mythologies for the most part, which mainly designed to scare voters, but it doesn't seem to be working. I just love it how the TDS sufferers somehow can figure out a way that Trump is responsible for a situation on an issue like abortion where he's the one that got the ball rolling by incepting the current SCOTUS in its form anyway. He's unimpeachable on the issue by both Republicans and Democrats, because afterwards he stuck to his guns and addresses it mainly as a state issue. Well, again, totally opposite Lindsey Graham, totally opposite some of the Dems, of course. Some of them want a national law to enshrine abortion and overrule the states, which, by the way, wouldn't probably work legally. They want to pass a law for that. They're overstretching too, but the GOP could just let them exhaust themselves with voters, but they're too dumb to do that. Typical Republicans. That's about all. Peace out.